The February 12th, 2024 regular city council meeting is called to order. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin, council, please put away cell phones. If you have personal business during the meeting, please move for a recess. If you are participating telephonically, please mute your phone unless you are speaking. Also, when speaking, please state your name for those streaming the meeting. As a reminder to attendees, this meeting is being streamed live. The camera is located in the back of the council chambers above the clock. Robert's Rules of Order is the parliamentary authority for council meetings under Wasilla Municipal Code 2.04.090. Under this authority, I respectfully request council observe the following. Kindly seek recognition before speaking. That no member speaks more than twice on the same motion without an affirmative vote on a motion to suspend the rules. That no member speaks a second time until everyone who wishes to do so has spoken once. The purpose of recognizing these rules is to ensure the right to speak is equally respected and that discussion is not dominated. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard. Here. Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Crafton.
Here.
Councilmember Velock.
Here.
Councilmember Rubio.
Here.
Councilmember Graham, are you on the line? Madam Mayor, you do have a quorum. All council members are with us in chambers except Mr. Johnson, who is participating telephonically. Councilmember Graham is absent and excused unless objection is raised from the body.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Velock, would you lead us, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first item of business is approval of the agenda. Are there changes to the agenda?
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Crafton.
I would like to move item number 8.4.2, AM number 2408 to new business, please.
Are there any other changes?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Yes, I would like to move, and I got to make sure I get this right here. All right, where did it go? One minute, please. I would like to move Ordinance 2406, the requirement of amending a Municipal Code 1308-110 for sand and grease and oil trap, that is 2406, to new business. We could discuss that, please, along with Ordinance 2407, amending Municipal Code 1304.140, prohibiting interference with fire hydrants. Again, so we could have a new discussion. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, I object. That's already on the agenda for public hearing for tonight.
Mr. Johnson, those two ordinances are already on the agenda for public hearing tonight, so you'll be able to discuss them.
Madam Mayor, I move
Thank you
the
very much.
agenda as amended.
Madam Mayor, I have a request for the agenda. I'd like to move item 8.2.1 to new business, ordinance serial 2409.
All right. Colleen, would you please restate your motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the agenda as amended.
I second it.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as amended. There are no special orders of the day. Mr. Graham has joined us at 6:05. There are no special orders of the day, so we'll move on to commission and agencies report. Wasilla High School, seeing no one. Report of partnership with the Greater Wasilla Chamber of Commerce, Deputy Administrator Nygaard.
Thank you, Mayor. In response to Councilmember Graham's request as an update to our partnership with the Greater Wasilla Chamber of Commerce, I just wanted to bring everybody up to date with where we started and where we're going. So in 2021, we had an agreement to lease the depot, and then we had a basic membership that we would participate in ribbon cuttings and various invites that they would send us. And then in 2023, after we did the SEDS, we took a different approach, and we asked them to design different city events that would help the community engage, and we would have digital marketing and really get our brand out there. And so they came back with a really comprehensive plan on how to do different events in the community. And so we did Blooming in Wasilla, which is a beautification event, and I put the stats in my report so you can take a look that we reached about 15,000 people, and we gave some interesting categories of events. The second one was Haunt Your Hometown. We did not know how popular, or I guess we were surprised at how much was going on in the city for Halloween, so we canceled that, and we went right to Light Up Wasilla, which was around the holidays with all of the Christmas lights, and we reached about almost 14,000 people, and there again gave out some awards, and then we were very active in support local. And so what we have seen through all of this activity in getting our name out there is we are now co-sponsoring with the borough and the chamber the first ever regional economic summit, where we're inviting industry and business leaders out here to take a tour of our airport. They're going to take a tour of the Port Mac and other strategic assets that we have. So it's really grown into a great partnership, and I think the additional investment has really paid dividends for our local businesses here and our partners. And I want to thank Jessica, the executive director of the chamber, for being here and always supporting us.
Thank you. We are moving on to ranch water quality presentation. Public Works Director Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. I wanted to give an update today on some water and wastewater topics. Today we're going to talk about our ongoing sewer mapping project, some frozen sewers that have popped up with that -30 stretch that we had, and a little more discussion on the ranch water quality update. Commissioner Crafton had asked about that at the last meeting. First, with our mapping project, one of the tasks we've set out to do is to visually identify all of our sewer assets. It's much easier to kind of get a feel for what we have out there for infrastructure, and also identify the risks and the needs that are out there. This is just a snapshot of a GIS map that we've been building. This is based on our billing data, and we have little icons at all of the facilities that have sewers that we maintain. So there are different colors for residential, commercial, and high-use areas such as car washes and breweries. And then we also have some areas that identify what we consider community sewer systems. So there are little segments that, like especially in Wazi, there's 2 community sewer segments where a bunch of those homes are connected by gravity sewer, and then they all drain into a communal tank and 1 lift station. And so that's a very good use of resources, because we don't have to have 14 lift stations. We have 1, but we have 1 larger tank that we own and maintain. We have identified at least 5 of those in our community, but what it has done is eliminated the fact that we do not currently have the equipment or technical skills to provide the inspection that those require. So in communities that have gravity systems, the typical maintenance method is to send a jet truck around every so many years, and you send a high-pressured hose upstream in that sewer line and you clean it out, and then you send a robotic camera up inside of those. We don't have that technology, and we've never done that before. So we have a very long backlog of these systems that need that care and maintenance. And so we'll be proceeding with some sort of probably contractual relationship in the beginning to get those services out here to do those vital inspections that have been delayed. So I just wanted the council to see what we're working on. This will be very useful as we illustrate the needs of these facilities and as we dive into either replacement or repair requests as we move forward. And I'll be happy to have this map interactive at the next time that we want to talk about it, and I can zoom into different locations and give you more information. It also helps us quantify the number of linear feet of that kind of pipeline that I was telling you about as we integrate static maps into a dynamic interface that helps us as the operators of the system, but also providing the community with information they need for development, redevelopment, expansion, that sort of thing.
Sorry to ask a question here, if I could, Madam Mayor. Sorry, back on the previous slide, if I could. Eric, I'm just basic question. So light blue is residential, and then the green markings are commercial, or is it vice versa?
Yeah, so one of the things we're going through is the data and identifying it. So in that map, if you, there's a couple shapes, there's some square kind of polygon shapes. Those colors are less important. They're just differentiating two zones. The little icons that show each septic tank, yellows are commercial, reds are yellows are residential, reds are high-use facilities such as car washes and breweries, and then the brownish color is generally commercial. There's a bunch of gray ones that are technically unknown at this point because we need to go through and clean up the data. So there's 4 flavors right now on that map.
Okay.
Could you explain again the yellow polygon areas?
Yeah, so there's a couple yellow polygons. The biggest one on the right is just showing where our sewer treatment plant is compared to everything else. There's a green and yellow one kind of center picture at the bottom. Those are the 2 phases of WASI that have the community sewers, phase 1, phase 2. Interestingly, it's actually phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 does not have community sewer. They only have water. And then I think phase 2 is the green one and phase 3 is the yellow one. And then up center top of the photo, there's 2 more community sewers. One's right by the gym, and the other one is on the corner of Peck and Bogard. Both condos. Moving on to frozen sewers. So with that stretch of sub-zero weather, we had some historically sensitive septic tanks and pump vaults freeze. And so this is not unheard of. My understanding is that stretch of -30 has not happened for a few years. But what I wanted to highlight was because of the way our sewer system works, having septic and then pump stations, they're susceptible to freezing from the top down. And so these are some ongoing photos of the maintenance that our staff is providing. When a sewer system like this freezes, it will be frozen until April. We have some mechanisms to catch them if we can early enough where we can defrost them. But with the depth of the frost right now, once they freeze, it becomes a maintenance routine for us where we send our crews out with our septic trucks and we treat them as holding tanks. The hoses, the discharge hoses are frozen, and there's very little way for us to defrost them because of the damage it poses if we try to add steam. So you can see a couple frozen vaults and a heater that we installed to try to get ahead of a tank that was close to freezing. Any questions on that? And the last update was the ranch water quality update. So I had been approached by the Gateway Community Council president to meet at their January 31st monthly meeting. Had a very nice discussion with a bunch of attendees. There are probably about 30 people there about the ongoing water quality concerns. The ranch, for those who may not know it, started out as a private water system. So it was built, maintained by the developer, Rex Turner, who has continued to develop that area. And it was fed by some wells drilled in that neighborhood. And most of those wells were very high in manganese. And so manganese is a dissolved mineral that comes out of the ground. It's in the stones in the aquifer. When it comes to the surface and enters the pipelines, interacts with oxygen and the chlorine that is used to disinfect the water, it will precipitate out and it starts to coat the inside of the pipes. And so when you have events that jostle or disturb that scale, it re-entrains into the water as little white flakes. And so if you don't have a filter on your system, you will see little floaty things in your water, and it's very concerning. It is a mineral that the EPA and the state have limits on, so we monitor for that. We don't tend to exceed the limits. There are times when it can reach pretty high concentrations. So it tends to be more of a nuisance because of the visible impacts. No one really wants to see little white floaty things in it. The other thing that the ranch has been dealing with is extra air in the water. Much like opening a soda bottle, when you release the pressure at the tap and you fill up a carafe of water, it's foggy, it's fuzzy looking. And if you let it sit for a few minutes, it clears from the bottom up as those bubbles rise to the surface. We have that. That happens here at the city too when I make coffee in the coffee maker. It's cloudy at first and then it clears. And so when you pair those two things together and historical issues with the original wells, the ranch residents have been very concerned. One of the main takeaways and one of the commitments I made was to increase our communication with the users, because when they are concerned and they ask questions, our response hasn't been timely, and so that just leaves a vacuum that is filled with more fear than understanding. So working with them to navigate the best communication pathway, it's looking like the Gateway Community Council notifications and a couple Facebook groups are probably the best way to communicate with the neighbors. They're all pretty tight-knit community. One of the things that we're working on is a regular flushing regime, and what you see in this photo is our staff opening a fire hydrant to flush the water out and get fresh water. As a background, water systems work best when they're designed in loops, because you want fresh water to move through the system. You don't want dead-end lines that can become stagnant. That's when you get particle problems. And so to keep fresh water moving, it's important to have a regime where we go out routinely and just keep that water moving. There is one operating well down at the ranch, but for the most part, the water that the ranch users receive is from our Spruce well system. It travels from the top of our system to the very bottom, which is the ranch. So we'll continue to communicate with them and listen to feedback if we have events. One of the things we don't have a handle on right now is when an event may cause those particles in the pipes to shake free. It's very common for water systems to have monitoring systems that watch for water hammer events when maybe there's a fire draw, or maybe there's just some use that we don't know about. There tends to be systems that will see that pressure spike and let us know that that happened. We have a pressure reducing system right at the entrance to the ranch in Garden Terrace. That's an opportunity for us to add those sensors so that if we see an event that we think will entrain more particles, then we can be proactive and we can let the neighborhood know so that it's not a reactionary response. We can give them as much heads up as possible so that if they want to limit their water usage or if they want to make preparations so that it's not disruptive, they can do that. And then in the broader scheme of things, as with many groundwater sources, there are minerals that we should be treating for, and that gives us redundancy in our water system. So if the ranch well is typically high in manganese, it makes sense to proceed with some on-site manganese treatment so that we have that as a backup source in case we have another pump failure at Spruce or something happens. We have wells over by Home Depot that are very good producing, but they are higher in arsenic than we want. So we need to start talking about on-site arsenic treatment so that we have a redundant supply. And then as we move on with larger projects such as the water interconnect, we have choices for where the water's coming from, so we can make quality choices as we continue to meet the needs of the public. This just kind of highlights the discussion we had with the water and sediment, the air and the sediment in the water. This is a picture of one of our water samples. So we're trying to improve our responsiveness when we get notifications that there is an issue with the water, and we've covered the rest of that. That's my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. A couple of questions. You talked about a pressure monitoring system. You know, the cost of that, what would that roughly be? And then secondly, when you were talking about the ranch, you may have said or perhaps implied that a lot of the visual properties of the water could be reduced by the homeowner with a filtering system. Is this a very expensive modification to the typical house, or is this something that's fairly inexpensive, you know, the little screw-on water filters sort of things? So.
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. Your first question about the water hammer sensors, I don't have a cost at this point. We're working on putting out an RFP for a sensor master plan, so it's a SCADA master plan, and that would be incorporated in that sensor package. One of the things we need to know is where the water, our water that we're producing is going, and so within that sensor package would also be a sensor that will alert us to the pressure spikes that we talked about. As for the whole house water filtering, it's the exact same technology that people might install in their homes when they're on their own well. If they have a hard water problem, they'll put a water softener in, and they tend to put in a whole house filter. So the typical process we see is several filters in different filtering micron sizes, and then there can be a charcoal filter at the end for taste. These particles are not they're not very small, so they're quite easy to filter. One of the things that the Gateway Council did was provided a survey to their users, and there were 71 respondents, and that was extremely helpful for me to get a feel for what the community down there has done. Many of them have whole house filters, and it is effective, but they have a reasonable complaint to say that those filters get clogged up pretty quickly when there's an event that jars those sediments free. There has been discussion in the past. I've seen some consultant discussions about, well, what is a long-term solution for those minerals coating the inside of the pipes? Some facilities like the TAPS pipeline use structures called pigs that clean out the inside of the pipeline. That is something that water lines typically are not designed to do. But there is some discussion about, you know, is there value in looking at how to get down into that water system and cleaning it out. I don't have any idea how expensive that would be, but that's really kind of the last resort, is to clean the pipe from the inside out. But I would recommend that if a resident was having water quality concerns because of the unsightly mineral deposits, that I would start with a whole house filter that is available for many experts in the valley due to our common well water problems.
Thank you.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you. Now, you said a lot of the water for this neighborhood is actually being serviced from the Spruce well in a lot of cases. Why is the water there specifically so much worse than other parts of the city, and they're not seeing this type of issue?
Well, my understanding on the historical system is that the particles that are impacting the visible quality of the water are latent particles, legacy particles. So when that system was isolated and it was only supplied by those wells, those are the ones that are really high in manganese. The system's old enough that it has coated the inside of those pipes. Our goal is to get ahead of it through flushing. We don't have the manganese problem with the spruce water. And so right now, the only well that we have online down there is just a backup. And so the way the settings are set is if there was a pressure problem or if there was a draw, say there was a fire down there, that well can sense when the pressure drops. And if it drops below 65 PSI, it'll turn on. But normally it's well above that. And so it's just a standby well. And so what we want to do is limit the events that jostle those pipes so that we have fewer and fewer of those events. And then also be proactive with flushing so that if we know that we're going to have an event for some reason, maybe we can get that out the fire hydrants before it goes in and affects people's homes.
Okay, thank you,
Madam
Eric.
Mayor.
And now we're moving on to employee survey results presentation. Human Resource Specialist, Yana and Sydney Miller. And Yana, I can't pronounce your last name. Sinowski.
Come on up here and drive. I'm just going to give you, the first two slides are really what I'm going to talk about, and then Yana will take over. Just to give you a little backstory about what happened. On January 8th, I made my presentation about retention and salaries. When I went back that Tuesday, January 9th, to the office and gave Yana a little update on it, I mentioned the fact that a lot of the council members had said something about surveys and how they were very helpful and everything. We found out that there's never been a survey done for the employees here. So without asking and with amazing creativity, on January 10th, she actually had a 13-question survey approved and sent out to 137 employees. So within 3 days, without even being asked, she had everything done and ready for us to go. And as you can see, the due date was January 24th, and she will tell you how many employees and everybody filled that out. I did something wrong. And then just a few notes, so to clarify what we're doing here. I just want to make you feel better that I screwed up. So we did not collect department names. We did not collect individual names. Everything was done to be very confidential. We wanted everybody to be able to say their piece without worrying about any retaliation or anything coming like that. We received a lot of feedback, almost over 200 comments we're giving as far as comments to the survey, which you will see some of those today. Anything you see in quotation marks is actually a comment from the survey. We did not change grammar. We did not change spelling. Yana really, really wanted to, but we left it as the employee actually said it. So we hope to use this information to actually change things and improve things in the departments. And in the future, our surveys will actually be more tailored and more defined to such as benefits, safety, and culture and those things as well. But Yana did a great job of coming up with 13 general questions that she will explain how she did it.
Thank you, Sydney. Good evening. Kind of like Sydney said, he came back and kind of mentioned, and so I sat down and I thought up of some questions. Some were as an employee, questions that I would want to be somebody ask me, and then also as an HR professional, some were questions that were based on things that I wanted to know from my employees. So you kind of see a little bit of both. Also, like Sydney mentioned, it's a very broad survey. We didn't go in depth. It was fairly quick, only 13 questions, and it goes everything from benefits to just their overall satisfaction, a little some HR related questions thrown in there as well. And we have definitely already learned a lot from just doing it, of like moving forward, what we would change. So the first one that I would just kind of get a background for longevity. For over or half of the surveyed employees had been at the city 5 years or less, based on what they had replied. Also, if you see on the graph, I tried to, on each graph that I included, or on each question, to let you know what the method of collection was, just for transparency reasons, whether it was a short answer or it was a multiple choice, and they would choose something that we had kind of thought up for them. And then, so on, 22 have been at the city 5 to 10 years, 18, 10 to 20. And I think that this is a really good idea of the city as a whole, even though only 88 employees did fill it out of 138, that we see from even the previous presentation before that, like 56%, I think it is, of employees have been at the city 5 years or less. So this kind of really closely mimics that. And then next we have demographics. So kind of like I had already mentioned, roughly 64% of all of our employees filled it out. Interestingly enough, exactly half were represented employees and half were non-represented employees. So 44 on each side. The little graph on there kind of gives you like a visual. The little orange circle represents the 51 non-represented employees that we have. And then the larger blue circle, because we have more, is 87 employees of represented employees that we have. And then in the middle is the employees who actually completed the survey. So the 86% represents of all of our non-reps. We had 86% fill it out. So in other words, out of the 50 employees that did not fill it out, only 7 non-reps didn't fill it out. So really good numbers there. And then also with the union employees, we had 51%.
Mayor, just for a moment here, I don't know if I have the most updated PowerPoint presentation in copy here with me. I had demographics first and then longevity, and then I don't have the demographics page. So hold on one second if you would. Okay, this was in the packet. Is it separate? Okay. Over, that's water. Oops. Okay, hadn't realized it. All right, very good, thank you. Appreciate it, go ahead.
I think those were the only 2 pages that had changes. So the rest should be
Oh, no
the
problem.
same.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Next question we asked was overall satisfaction. What is your overall satisfaction as an employee with the city? And we did give them some options within, like some pre-options that they can choose, or if they felt that none of our options kind of fit where their satisfaction was, they did have the option to write it in under other. So 44% came back, said we're satisfied for now, but if a better opportunity comes, I'll take it. And 33% said extremely satisfied, a plan to retire, kind of so on. And interestingly enough, out of the, so kind of a little bit difference with what I was expecting, a lot of the employees that came back and said that they were extremely satisfied and planning to retire here would be maybe some of our employees who had a lot of longevity at the city. So when I drilled down a little bit, I was pretty surprised to find that I think over half of the employees that said they're extremely satisfied and plan to retire here haven't been here for 5 years. They've been all 5 years or less. So I just thought that was interesting for garnering feedback. And then the rest, same as with those who said satisfied for now, it was, I think, roughly half who had been here 5 years or less. And then equally, the rest were divided between who have been here 5 to 10 years and then 10 to 20. So kind of across the board there.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Graham?
Yeah, like Councilperson Sullivan Leonard, I didn't receive the updated packet, so my notes are on the packet that was sent out. If we could go back to the longevity slide with the big pie chart on it. There we are, right there. What is the longevity comparison of represented employees versus non-represented employees? Is it significant?
That is actually a really good
Is it
question.
significantly different?
I did not drill down farther enough to see the difference, but I can get that for you.
I would appreciate that, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. And then after, so in other, some employees they wanted to write some of their own. So one of the ones on the screen, the quotation mark is an employee they said they're satisfied, but burnout was so much to do. So they're not necessarily looking for another job, but they are feeling the burnout. Some other quotes that I included was another employee who just said they're satisfied, but they just feel that the budget isn't supporting the increase in employees to continue to function. Another employee commented under other as well, saying they really appreciate the open door policy that the mayor and upper management has, and that they think that that's not very often that you find that. And they hope that that continues, and culture is changing for the better, but still a little lagging. And they're satisfied, but they do hope for more employee support. And then another employee commented, and they said that they had been satisfied 6 months ago, and planning to be here long-term, but are currently putting in for new applications elsewhere. And again, just to kind of reiterate, because we wanted to keep it confidential, we don't have information as to maybe even what department these employees were in.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Graham?
on your overall satisfaction set of slides there, is there any comparison that you did or that you saw perhaps through SHRM or some other organization of, when you look at that pie chart, what is your overall satisfaction as an employee with the city, of how that would compare to non-governmental organizations, civilian employers? Has there been anything that we could use to compare that chart to?
Well, this is the first time we've actually done one of these surveys, so we don't even, one thing we're upset about is we don't have anything to go back and see which way the direction is moving. And go back to SHRM, we can actually go back and do that. We did not look at that yet. One thing we actually noticed when we did this was the fact that so many were under 5 years. The first thing that occurred to us, that most of those people under 5 years have only been through one administration and part of just the other one. So that is one thing we really took from that, was that they haven't seen the things that some of the other people had seen that have been here over 5 years. So, but we can look into SHRM and see what these things, see what other statistics we can find out there.
If you do find an update, I'd be, some sort of comparison, I'd be interested in seeing that. Thank you.
Glad to send that out.
Madam Mayor,
Colleen?
just on that same sequence, I imagine our salary survey might be able to gather some of that information. When you send that out, you're going to do comparisons with other NGO or other governments or what have you. So is that a tool then that could gather some of that information as well? I mean, not just salary, but overall
Overall
health
satisfaction.
and wellness of particular businesses. Okay, thanks.
And that's something where, like I said, we'll get more defined with the next surveys we send out.
Yeah, because I think Eric had also mentioned that when he was in Juneau, they would do a lot more in-depth employee culture surveys, and that they would be just really long. But this was kind of our first one, so it's very brief, and we didn't get to ask us maybe as much as we could have or drill down. Okay, just skip. Then we wanted to ask further, after we got overall satisfaction, is do they feel, is there satisfaction with pay? And the question that we asked is, do you consider your current wage a fair compensation for the work that you do? And a majority, 64%, did say no. And they did, in the end, we had a comment section. We had a couple that wanted to clarify, and on there's a quotation of what one of the employees said, where they said that their wage is fair and competitive for what the position is, but with the amount of work that they feel like they're doing, they don't feel like they're adequately being compensated because they're doing it for the work they feel, at least of two employees, three. And other employees have said, well, they think that they're getting paid enough, but maybe one specifically employee said that they think the Wasilla Police Department is just entering competitive stage overall in the state, so maybe that's where they're lagging. And then another employee clarified, also said that the wage I earn is not fair compared to what union employees get. Next, we had a question over benefits.
Before you start this discussion there, can you
Yeah.
tell me what those vertical lines are? Is that 20, 40, 60, 80, 100%? I mean, it kind of implies that, but it
Oh,
doesn't
yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah. So this one was a little bit difficult. This one, so I created the survey in forms, and they have, so they automatically graphed all my answers or based on what they were. This one was a little bit unique because it was a ranked choice kind of, weighted kind of average. And because I had them rank this, their answers on those questions based on what they thought the city was a valuable employer, they didn't give me any numbers, and and it was difficult to present the information, I guess, in a more understandable way. So this is all I have, but basically what this graph is saying is that the majority of employees put health insurance first, for what in their opinion makes the city was still a valuable employer to them, and then and so on. PERS in retirement being the second highest that they had put, or it was close to the top, like it was the second one, and then same as with pay. So I don't have exact like percentages because it wasn't necessarily a percentage.
So what this graph shows
Question.
you is how many people put healthcare first. So that bar graph's just the number of people who put those things first.
Versus, yeah.
So, looking at this, I mean, the way it's formatted, it looks to me like 97% of respondents put health insurance first. Is that not
That's very
correct,
close.
or is that?
Yeah, it's very close.
Okay.
We'll get the exact numbers because we can,
Well, I'm not interested in the exact numbers. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the vertical lines
and then you can
properly.
see the second one mentioned the most first was PERS, and then it's on down.
Yeah, it is a little bit weighted because I don't think it's necessary that health insurance was the 97, like you said, kind of put it first. I think it was the most people put it first and then followed by either it was second or very close to the top. But I can give you, yeah, we can give you the information of the breakdown of how they rank
Okay.
them.
I don't think I need the breakdown. I'm just trying to understand the.
Yeah, it
format of the
was,
graph.
yeah, no, that's a great question, because it was a little bit confusing as well, because there was definitely people that put PERS or pay or PTO, or the last one is pride of saying I work for the city of Wasilla. Definitely people did put those first, but it just ranked them based on overall kind of where they fell in. I don't know if that makes sense. And we did get feedback later for some employees saying that it was a lot easier to put a tangible benefit like health insurance at the top. And maybe that's, pride of saying I work for the city kind of ended up coming at the bottom. So maybe in the future, we could separate those and, keep tangible benefits together and then the intangibles separate. Another benefit question that we asked, and also this is a screenshot, the numbers on the side are the actual number of employees who chose that. And this question was, what benefits would you like to see the city offer? And we gave them some that we were thinking of that might be great benefits, like more PTO, pet insurance, discount to gym membership, or other entertainment services. And then we also let them write it in if they had better ideas. So also based on the graph, the most 70 employees out of our 88 all put down more PTO. So that's definitely one that they're interested in seeing, I'd say the most. And then on the side, you'll see where they wrote in some of other benefits that they'd like to see. And then obviously there are some constraints that we can't always offer what they want. Like for example, comp time, it is, unless you have a CBA that allows for that, the state of Alaska doesn't allow employers to offer that. And then another quote under benefits was, this employee said, across the board pay increases, WPD employees' wages do not compete regionally. And again, just stressing kind of that with WPD specifically, and then being underpaid.
And a question for you here, specifically talking about the police department. I know we, I won't say we actively recruit in Palmer, but one of the discussions that our officers have with Palmer police officers is they'll get paid more if they move to Wasilla, and I know some specific examples where that, where I could put some numbers on that. But, so when we say regionally, could you describe the region, or was this just a person's response?
With the quotes, it's a person's response.
Yes, yes. It is it's a quote directly, but I imagine the employees probably comparing to state is probably like the state troopers is probably somebody that they would compete with. And yeah, probably other agencies around the state too.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Crafton?
So, thank you. I want to go back one page to the benefits there and just something to bring forward. Is there a way we could get a comparison, kind of like we were talking about with the salary and other things, with what other people might be offering in these pay ranges per se? Is comparison of how much this person might be getting for PTO, or does somebody else offer pet insurance, or just anything else here as a comparison?
That's something we can ask our salary survey people to do as well, just go out. Because I know I've gotten I've been here 14 weeks, and I've gotten 2 other cities asking for our list of benefits that we give. So I know a lot of people are doing benefit comparisons along with salary comparisons. So.
It obviously is very important to people here. It's not always the pay. A lot of times it's benefits.
And on that note, Sydney, are we willing to share our survey results, and could we ask others to share their survey results with us?
The best way to get people to share their surveys is to share your salary survey is to share yours. So yes, we do share it. The people that I know right now are doing the salary surveys, we send them out our pay grades. I know a couple of them have actually checked our job descriptions against theirs just to make sure that we're doing it apples to apples, so to speak. But yeah, we share it as much as we can because we know we're going out, so we're going to be asking for it as well.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, just a reminder, council, please go through the mayor to be recognized before speaking. Thanks.
The other questions we asked, kind of like I mentioned earlier, were HR-related questions. So again, as an HR office, we want to know if they know what their FMLA rights are as an employee, or do they know workers' comp? So overall, pretty good numbers for these. We had, it's kind of small, 82% are aware of their FMLA rights, or the Family Medical Leave Act is what that stands for. I did have some that did not know what FMLA is. Again, great information for our office to move forward and be like, okay, maybe there's some more educating we can do in this area. And then same as with workers' comp, great information there, where for the most part, they were aware of their, if they were get injured, how to file a claim, or they knew where to go to get help to do that. Second part of HR related questions, we asked a question if employees feel safe coming into work each day. In other words, is their environment free of harassment or intimidation? 70, again, good portion did feel safe. There were some that said no, and again, this is something that we take this information back and see if by follow-up surveys or maybe drilling and educating our department heads and managers to see if we can make that percentage even smaller. Because in my opinion, 13% is too much. And if you experience any kind of workplace harassment, is there someone currently that you feel comfortable with talking to? We felt that important. I felt that important to ask as well. Just because if they were to experience any of that, is there somebody at work that they can go to? I think that goes a long way in making sure that our employees feel safe and they have somebody to confide in. And again, for the most part, 67% yes. There were quite a few that said an A. They just didn't feel like it applied to them. And then roughly the same percent that also answered no. And the other percentage that is in there is they would put in either like an employee's name in there. So that's that there. Next, we asked them what is the biggest challenge that they face at work. And we asked them to be as specific as possible. The top, and all of these are also employee quotes, just directly copied. The top ones that we saw kind of repeat over and over were workload and work culture. Kind of like the quotes kind of speak for that, and not enough staffing in their department, so that having an effect on their workload, I think. And then lack of communication was also one that kind of came up, and then along with a couple other ones.
So when you talk about workload, I mean, you look at the first bullet there, the city's grown a lot over the last decade, but we haven't added many new positions. When you do an update on that, could you perhaps show, by department, how many, look at 10 years or something like that, and look at the historical growth of the city, and, just something to put that in perspective? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, and also just that perspective is also good because just to remember, employees are filling this out from their view in their department, so they might be in a department maybe that hasn't had a lot of positions added, whereas another department in the city might have had that more. So again, just some nuances in that. And then after we asked them what their biggest challenge was, we asked if you could do one thing to improve your department, what would it be? There's the little screenshot on the bottom, which is kind of a screenshot of some of their answers. But overall, again, we just kind of saw some, the top three that were mentioned over was more people, more pay, and more PTO. So, and they are closely tied in together. I believe, with increased pay, it's sometimes a lot easier to recruit, and then when it's easier to recruit, you have the people there.
And when you talk about flexible work schedule, are people talking specifically about working from home, or are they talking about alternate hours, or do you have any feeling on that?
Yeah, my educated guess would probably be a little bit of both. I think that maybe more flexibility in if they are late coming into work one day, that they can stay maybe a little bit later instead of having to take PTO for like half an hour or whatever. As well as I do think it probably, well, and then, I mean, it says even allowing for a leave without pay if the employee so chooses. Again, I want to say it's probably flexibility as it's tied to PTO.
And what you see mostly when they talk about that is also the hybrid schedules, where they can actually work some days from home, some days here. So that's another thing, a lot of flexible time people mean by hybrid schedules.
We did have some other comments that did allude to telework and wanting that flexibility. And again, there was a lot of comments. We kind of tried to choose, some of the best ones or the ones that we thought that were very common or like we saw repeated and put them in there. But we do have, more. We have all of the comments that if you would like, we will provide it for you. And then lastly was the additional comments page. This question, I guess another thing I did want to know is that all the other questions were required, so they had like a little asterisk by them and they couldn't move on until they answered it. This last question was purely their feedback. It was not a required question. If they left it empty, they could still submit it. And we got quite a bit, I think over like 40 or over, I think 50 comments on it as well. So employees do have something to say. And so when it came to additional comments, one was increase, again, kind of a pattern here, which is increasing PTO, and to stop penalizing new employees. We currently have the policy where if an employee starts, they do have to work a whole calendar month before they do see PTO show up on their paycheck. And then again, another one in comment on wage and how that compares to other cost of living increases. And also just some various quotes kind of we pulled just on various improvements or what employees wanted to comment on.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Crafton.
Thank you. You said these were just some of them, this wasn't the list of them?
Correct.
Would you be willing to send out the full list? I mean, I'd be curious to peruse the room and see what everybody else was saying.
We'll have that list to the clerk and she can get it to whoever.
Yeah, absolutely. Nope. Okay. And yeah, and I think just to kind of also reiterate kind of the point in my position specifically as well, over the last 6 years, we've had 5 HR people hired. And so that's, in my opinion, it's hard to build rapport with your employees, especially in HR, which I think is so important to have when it feels like it's a revolving door. And if you can't keep somebody here for, more than a certain number of years. So key takeaways based on the survey is that we do think that we need to update our pay structure, maybe relook at some of the benefits that we're offering there and update those as well. Look at maybe what some other companies are offering and see if we can better compete, and then improve workplace culture as well, for sure. And that is all.
A couple of questions before you leave.
Mr. Graham.
One thing, one of the comments that the employees had was, we need to enter the computer age, and I would like to,
Mr. Graham,
yes,
would you please use protocol?
okay, is that part of Robert's Rules of Order?
Yes?
Okay, I'll be happy to do that. So, Madam Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Why, thank you. Okay, so, as I was saying, one of your employee comments said we need to enter the computer age, and I just really wanted to point out, and I hope that you and HR are aware of the great work that the deputy administrator is doing to try and update our processes so that we can, enter the computer age. It's not just a matter of flipping a switch and becoming that. So I hope that you're letting people know that the administration is working on that and working hard. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours the deputy administrators put in, but certainly a lot of conversations with her there. So kudos to her, and I hope the employees recognize that how she and the administration are working on that. And if you could talk about the word culture, improve workplace culture. That's in here 4 or 5 times. Could you maybe give me something a little more specific than culture, or perhaps a definition of culture?
Culture would be, in my opinion, I think when you think of culture, it's kind of the way, whether it's like an ethnic culture where it's a way, or a family has a culture where the way things are done. So I think every workplace has a culture where there's some things that are kind of everybody does and it's accepted. And sometimes new people coming in soon enough are kind of flow into that, whether it's, a culture of, for example, like even dress code could be a workplace culture thing. Do we have a culture of professional, or is it not? So I think that's one piece of it. I also think it's probably a lot of maybe the intangibles as well of the health of a organization when it comes to, is there like that communication? Is it open? Is there trust within, employees and their supervisors and the departments? That's how I imagine. I don't know if Cindy wants, you want to add to it?
One thing, what we look at with culture is, actually, there's a lot of things we look at. One, does an employee feel safe coming to work? You want a culture of safety where they feel they can come to work and be safe to come here, whether it's from harassment or whether it's physical from the citizens and everything. One, you want a culture where you feel that everything, there's imagination and creativity where you can actually have ideas and they're heard and they can actually be implemented and done. You want a culture of service where you actually feel that you are doing something great for the community. And then you want a culture of communication where they trust what's coming out from the mayor, from the deputies, from their managers when they hear that. And then you actually communicate with them enough so they understand what's going on. So that's the kind of culture that we're trying to look at to see what we have and how we go forward.
If I could follow up on that. So that's a pretty big umbrella,
Yes, it is.
as you're well aware. So in the future, when we talk about culture, it'd be handy to talk about specific aspects of the culture. I mean, we talked about workplace safety, 84% or something said they felt safe. But I mean, that's part of culture, and it says here, improve workplace culture. You know, if we could improve workplace culture in these specific areas based on comments or whatever, it would be more, I mean, this is a really political answer, improve workplace culture. That's kind of like, well, let's lower taxes, you know. Okay, great, where do we do that? So, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you. Two questions, or maybe one's more of a statement. I think Mr. Graham asked earlier about splitting the survey, or at least one of the pie charts, into the representative, non-representative. Could we get pretty much this entire, all the graphs I feel like could be valuable being split, just especially when it comes like to the safety aspect of it. You know, obviously our police officers fall under the represented category there. So that'd be a good way to see the difference between how that's following. And on,
Mr. Crafton, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but if this is an anonymous survey, then how are you
Oh, wait,
gonna
I guess
find
maybe you're right.
out who is representative and who is non-representative?
That was going to, I'm not sure if we can dig that deep into certain
Okay.
questions, because again, we'll just have to go back and look at how we
well,
collected it.
did we have the question of, I mean, how do we know that they were represented in the first place then? Because that was one of the
Well, we
graphs on here.
That was one of the questions we asked, when I told her that was, are you represented, or are you union or non-rep?
Right.
But I'm not sure how that translates into the other. We'll have to go back and look. If we
Okay.
get it, we'll-
Yeah, I
If you
could
can
go
get it
back
off,
and
you can.
see,
Okay.
yeah.
Second part, going onto the culture aspect of it. Pride of saying I work for the city was the lowest thing. I mean, and my eyes thinking about culture, that's part of what culture would fall under when you come work for a city. I mean, that's what I would feel like, is we want people that are here. I mean, yes, we're all here for a job, we're all here for a paycheck, though at the same time, you want to enjoy the place you're working at. And that's, to me, that's what culture would mean to me, is knowing that all of our employees are here not just for a job and for benefits, but because, hey, I'm doing something different by working for a government that's, you know, the amazing city of Wasilla. So, thank you.
Seeing no other, Yana, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are moving on to public participation, public hearing. We've got 5 ordinance scheduled for public hearing this evening. Madam Clerk, please read ordinance serial number 24-04 by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ordinance serial number 2404, amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by appropriating $25,000 from the general fund balance to the airport equipment fund for the purchase of equipment, including loader forks.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 24-04 is now open. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 24-04?
Madam Mayor, I move ordinance serial number 24-04.
Is there a second?
Madam Mayor, I second that.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sullivan Leonard and seconded by Councilmember Velock to adopt ordinance serial number 24-04. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor, could we have the title read into the record, please?
I thought you did.
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah, she did.
Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Colleen?
thank you. With this particular ordinance, Eric, is this part of our CIP list of projects that we're continuing to move forward with improvements at the airport?
Thank you for that question. Through the mayor, this was an add-on to a CIP that funded some equipment at the airport. The need for this arose during an emergency operations tabletop exercise where we looked at a natural disaster event in Wasilla and our response capabilities at the airport. We have the equipment at the airport to assist with an event that needs offloading capabilities, but we don't have the forks. And so with the risk that we face every day and the fact that it's a small but important piece of equipment, we decided to ask for this funding so that we could fill that gap before we actually need to use it at some point.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, please read ordinance serial number 24-05 by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's amending Wasilla Municipal Code Sections 1304-170 and 1304-180 to clarify customer testing and reporting requirements for backflow prevention, allowing for the collection of fees for the city's reporting obligations, and amending Section 120.030 to reflect penalties for violations of the cross-connection policy.
Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 24-05?
Madam Mayor?
Colleen,
Thank you. I move ordinance serial number 24-05.
is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sullivan Leonard and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to adopt ordinance serial number 24-05. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Colleen?
Thank you. Could we have Eric please give an overview, staff overview on this?
Absolutely, through the mayor. In September, we were inspected by the EPA for our water system. And one of the reporting requirements is that we have in our code that any facility that poses a reasonable amount of risk of having chemicals or industrial practices or that sort of thing that could cross-contaminate our water have a backflow prevention device. While our code does say that, our code currently does not have any reporting requirements. And that is very important to safety and to remaining in the good graces with EPA. So this code change says not only are you expected to have that backflow prevention device, you must show us that someone, a qualified testing agency, has tested it on a yearly basis and that you meet those requirements so that we can uphold our due diligence for the safety of our water system. So working with legal support, we added the language that's necessary to require that testing and reporting back to the city so that we can meet those federal requirements.
Follow up, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
On page 48, there's a list of fees with regard to anything that's in violation of this particular code. Did we have provisions prior that we would actually penalize anyone who was out of compliance with EPA rules, or is that something the state did, or where were we prior on this? These are new charges, I imagine. New penalties.
Through the mayor, that table is not new. It is just showing that we're adding, there's a bit of a formatting confusion. If you turn to the prior page, you'll see the new penalty if you don't adhere. So the new penalty is cross-connection violation. It's in bold, and it's added to that table, which is carried on the second page. But to answer your question, there had been no reporting requirements, so there had been no penalty for not reporting. So now there is a requirement and a penalty if you don't report once a year.
Okay, thank you.
Madam
Mr.
Mayor.
Crafton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This would probably go to our attorney here. Just reading through this in an effort to not put too much weight on our public director's shoulder, our public works director's shoulders, when we're doing our, for instance, landscape one, we had also given the ability that the director could give a designee. I didn't see that anywhere in here, and I just didn't, I'm wondering if it could be necessary. I don't want to hold this up. I think it should pass. I'm just curious if we needed to add something so that our public works director had the ability to designate somebody to also make some of these decisions for him.
Yeah, I don't have the best answer right now because I don't have the code pulled up in front of me, but I'm assuming that somewhere in Title 13 that designation is made. We're only revising one chapter of that title. So the designation is likely elsewhere in the title for Title 13 and covered there.
That's all I need to know.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple things here for Public Works. Previously in paragraph F, which starts on line 110, it kind of grandfathered in systems that were already there. It says, at the time of installation and which have properly maintained, blah, 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 blah. So is that grandfather clause, obviously it has been stricken, but is this going to require people to put in new systems since that grandfather clause has kind of been stricken? And second question here would be line 127. These inspections and tests shall be performed by the assembly manufacturer's representative or by a certified tester approved by the director. Do we have a list of those certified testers in existence now, and are they readily available locally, or do they have to bring people in from outside to do these tests?
Through the mayor, so to answer your first question, the grandfather clause is not an acceptable safety guard for a municipal water system. So if you need to have that protection, you cannot be grandfathered in because you're opening the community up to risk. To answer your other question on testers, they are very common devices with fire protection systems. So there are many contractors in the valley who perform them regularly, and they know how to submit these exact reports because City of Anchorage and other municipalities require them at this point. So to adhere to this is well within their daily tasks.
And follow up, if I may, when we talk about, the grandfather clause goes away because it doesn't meet the requirements of the EPA, have we identified any systems here in the city where they would have been grandfathered in the past but now need to do something new? And have we discussed this with them?
We have not reached out as this had not been amended. We will do that if this passes.
And if there are such systems, is there going to be some sort of grace clause where they have a certain amount of time to comply with this?
We would be happy to work with them, but time would be of the essence because of the risk it poses and the federal regulations that are at risk.
I can tell you, being a hairdresser in my former life, every shampoo bowl in this city or in the borough has got one of these on them and has had for, 40 years. Because they don't want Prem solution in the water. Anyway, is there more discussion? Seeing none, is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, please read ordinance serial number 24-06 by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Amending Wasilla Municipal Code Section 1308110 to require grease, oil, and sand interceptors for food service establishments and vehicle wash facilities, and to require reporting of interceptor maintenance.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 24-06 is now open. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 24-06?
Madam Mayor, I move ordinance serial number 24-06.
Is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sullivan Leonard and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to adopt ordinance serial number 24-06. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor, again, could we please have a summary report from Eric?
Public Works Director.
Thank you. Through the mayor. In much the same light as reporting for the backflow prevention is required, the proper maintenance of the grease, oil, and sand interceptors is a vital requirement for an operational sewer system. So what we typically see is a facility that may need those is built, such as a restaurant or a car wash or something else, brewery, for instance. And the design review requires those pieces of infrastructure to be installed. But we need to assure that they are being maintained properly. And so that has not been part of the code. We need to know that they are having those materials withdrawn before they enter into the public system because of the damage and long-term costs it puts on the system. So this is a similar desire to have it in code that those operations alert us that they are properly maintaining their system so that we can reduce the number of emergency call-outs when those impact our systems.
Madam Mayor, if I could follow up?
Yes.
In addition to what you described here, are there any issues with coffee? I know we have many baristas and coffee shops all across Wasilla, and I know in the past that had been an issue. Is that part of this as well?
The code would allow for that if we found extreme circumstances. I don't know of any coffee issues.
Okay.
It mainly has to do with fats, oils, greases, grit, and those. And there are some brewing spent grains that cause problems too.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Erica had called you earlier today with some questions on this, particularly questions, again, regarding businesses which may not currently be in compliance, and if they are not, how much time are we going to give them to be in compliance? So are we aware of businesses that don't meet the new standards? And if there are such businesses, obviously we're going to work with them, but since this is not a DEC sort of thing, this is a kind of a city standard sort of thing, are we on a different timeline here to get these fixed?
Through the mayor. So one of the questions you'd asked was the number of businesses that we think this impacts. Working with the finance department and looking at our sales tax records, we estimate at least 187 businesses have a model that they probably create wastes that need to have separation. I think the businesses that are most at risk are startups that find a location that did not have the infrastructure installed initially. So I'm thinking of a strip mall that was regular store sales and a restaurant moves in. That strip mall may not have had the oil and grease separator in it because they were not built for a restaurant. That's where the correct land use permits come in. So if they follow the procedure and come and get the permit they need because their use has changed, then we work with that client to identify the state of their infrastructure and work out a reasonable timeline to meet that. So we have gone through this process before. We are interested in allowing businesses to formulate wherever they want to, as long as we can have an assurance that they are going to adhere to the infrastructure requirements that we have. But we do not have an active list of businesses that we intend to target with this. It's more building the communication that we need to protect our system in the long run.
Follow up. So, you said we don't currently have a list of businesses that, we would be interested in. You use the word target. I'm not sure that's a good word, but the businesses that we might inquire as to. So is this going to be initially going to be a code compliance sort of thing, or is this going to be your department reaching out and saying, hey, are you aware of the regulations?
So my intention for initiating movement, if this passes, is to take the list of entities that have work orders because of fats, oils, and greases and sediments, and let them know that we expect them to report on a routine basis. I already know over the last year where we've seen exceeded number of call-outs because of not maintaining their systems, and so work closely with them to reduce those and get them on a timeline where the number of emergency call-outs that we have because of non-maintenance goes down significantly.
Is there further discussion?
Mayor,
If there's no, Mr. Johnson,
Madam Mayor and the council, I guess I'm a little bit concerned because of section F on line 64. It basically states that in the past, or it gave the inference that in the past, in the opinion of the city, they were necessary, which means we have potential out there, businesses, where they wouldn't necessarily be in compliance. And yet, we're going to be passing a law that as soon as we pass this, they're now out of compliance with no real grace period or means of really coming into compliance instantly. So I'm really hesitant to just simply say, yeah, we're going to do this, and then we'll fine you if you're out of compliance. And some of these businesses, maybe like we're old residential businesses, and the cost of compliance here could be quite large. And we're not even stating what our cost of compliance is. We're just making a rule that people will now have to follow. So I'm really hesitant in some aspects of this ordinance. Thank you.
okay. Is there further discussion?
Madam Mayor, to follow up on Mr. Johnson's comment, it sounds like on line 66 where it says, in the opinion of the city, and then furthermore, it talks about as specified in the code 13-12-030B. Would there be instances that are not specified in the code? I mean, I'm confused where it says in the opinion of the city and then specifically talks about code. So is the code insufficient when it talks about where these systems would be required? And I'm looking at page lines 66 and 68.
Jess?
Mayor, if I could. So in the opinion of the city language was already there and remains there, and it's going to further specificity by adding that every food service establishment, vehicle wash facility, and other location, at which in the opinion of the city, it's actually meant to provide more clarity, and then the discretion of the city still remains. And then the line about the amounts specified in the code elsewhere in Title 13 goes on to say, or any flammable waste, sand, or other harmful ingredients. Basically, it's allowing your Public Works Department the ability to look on a case-by-case basis. If they're in the excess of the limits actually set forth in code, then they would absolutely need to be, they'd be required to have this installed. But there are other elements in which, Eric gets these call-outs for his department having to deal with these issues. It allows the city to take those on a case-by-case basis and make sure that those businesses are operating appropriately to protect the water system. That helps.
Thank you for the explanation there, Madam Attorney. But one of the things that we're working on, in this joint process with the council and the planning commission is to kind of get rid of these gray areas where the planner can just decide, or anybody can just decide, yes, this is, or no, this isn't. So would this be, in the opinion of the city, is this something that somebody could appeal to the planning commission, or would they strictly appeal to you and you would have the ultimate authority to say yes or no? I mean, I understand the attorney's answer, but I'm not comfortable with the implications.
So this doesn't fall under planning, so there's no appeal process to the planning commission. It's a public works code compliance issue. So you wouldn't have that kind of appeal process. The discretion already exists, so if you don't pass the ordinance, the discretion remains that in the opinion of the city where they want this installed, it has to be installed. And I think it's really meant to, I can see the way you're reading it and the concern that it would be applied inconsistently, but it's really meant to address technical and scientific issues with what is being put in the drain and the city being able to react to those things in the context of a code that already has effluent limits that are then federally regulated. So there's kind of hard and fast effluent limits that we have to comply with and the code already complies with, and then we're trying to provide some more discretion because when you have sand backed up or something, he's told me stories of car washes. This is not my personal experience, obviously. So that's what it's meant to do. It's not meant to create unnecessary discretion or a gray area.
Thank you.
Okay, is there further discussion?
Eric has comment.
Madam Mayor.
Eric?
If I could speak to Mr. Johnson's comment for 1 second. If you look at section G, it talks about fully evacuating and cleaning them every 180 days. I think you could consider that as the first grace period. So if this passes, those not in compliance have 180 days to figure out what we're going to do. And then they need to have it evacuated and stay to that schedule unless we come to some other agreement because of the load that that facility is putting on our system.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you please take a roll call vote on the motion?
I sure will, Madam Mayor. Thank you. This is on the adoption of ordinance serial number 2406. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Yes.
Councilmember Graham.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Crafton.
Yes.
Councilmember Velock.
Yes.
Councilmember Rubio.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, that motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Sullivan Leonard, Graham, Johnson, Crafton, Velock, and Rubio in support.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome. Madam Clerk, please read ordinance serial number 24-07.
Thank you. That's amending Wasilla Municipal Code Section 1304-140 to prohibit all acts interfering with access to city fire hydrants and amending Section 120-030 to reflect penalties for violations of those prohibitions.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 24-07 is now open. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person.
Hello, my name is Jeff Anderson. I'm a fire marshal with the Central Matsu Fire Department. Thank you for allowing me to come down here and talk about my support of this ordinance right here. So I think it's pretty universal, the expectation and the hope that if there's a fire emergency, that the fire department's going to have quick, readily access to a fire hydrant if need be. So some of the pictures that we're showing you around here that I provided to the council just has to do with recent events this winter. It happens every winter when a hydrant can be blocked by snow. That's one of the things that can definitely inhibit us. When a hydrant is blocked by snow, of course, it takes somebody to have to dig it out. So some of the ways we've tried to educate the public is there's also the flyers that I've been posting around. We've been working with the city of Wasilla. They're at our fire stations. Just try to educate the public, that if there's an emergency here, we're going to need access to this hydrant. Mother Nature's going to do what it's going to do. There's over 400 hydrants in the city, so neither the fire department nor the city has the resources, the staff to dig those out. Nor do they all need to be. Certain hydrants, just geographically, don't get as buried as other ones. Certain hydrants don't get as blocked in by snow as other ones, and I think that's really the intent of this ordinance is that we do what we can with working with the city based on a citizen complaint process. Hey, these hydrants are buried. Just this weekend, we had staff up at Sun Mountain area digging out some hydrants. So that's kind of what the spirit of this is about, is just that another form of education. We're working with the city of Wasilla through like an Adopt a Hydrant program, try to just get the word out there. Local businesses, schools, even subdivisions, a ranch, people where they live and there's a fire hydrant out in front, they might want to make sure the fire department can get there to get to it. If they can help out, great. But what this ordinance is really about is just human acts of somebody moving snow up against it to obstruct it. And then the other thing that can happen, even regardless of winter, is heavy equipment damaging a hydrant. I think the city knows about how water's precious, and a lot of people just don't understand the trickle-down effect if a hydrant gets damaged, and then what that actually entails to the drinking water, the suppression systems, everything else further down the line. So, any questions for me?
Madam Mayor, may I ask a question of
Yes.
the fire marshal? Thanks for being here. So it sounds like from what you said, the borough is kind of responsible for maintenance of hydrants. You talked about digging things out on Sun Mountain and so on and so
Yeah.
forth. Wouldn't that be a city?
Yeah, no,
If they're in the
clarify.
city, wouldn't that, and they're attached to the city's water system, wouldn't that be the city's
Correct,
responsibility?
100%. Yep. There's no responsibility of the borough. The borough provides fire service for the city of Wasilla, but the hydrants are their city's infrastructure, yes. So we are not obligated to. It's just of all the people that want a fire hydrant to work, it's the fire department and the persons whose business is affected. So we do what we can to try to help out when somebody complains. But yeah, that's kind of why this is about too, is that we're by no means under any obligation to dig out all these hydrants, nor can we really effectively.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You mentioned Adopt a Hydrant program. Could you speak to kind of what your idea is around that?
Yeah, sure. That was one of the pictures floating around too. It's a picture of a Gerd Woodian's idea of dressing out a hydrant. And so to dress out a hydrant is kind of a firefighter term, but there's other ways to, again, not impede the hydrant, but to take ownership of that hydrant. So it's like a stocking cap, a picture of, sorry, where was I?
Good.
Lights to decorate it. It just had to be in work with the city because it's the city's hydrants, you know. What can somebody do? That was our thought with the school district. What if it was, you know, Mockatons versus Iditarod or whatever, elementary school. Everybody's getting together. If there's a hydrant there and they want to take ownership of that, kind of like a coloring contest, but it can be adopt a hydrant. It's only for the wintertime, right? They really have to worry about it in schools. But just that kind of, it has to be coordinated with the city for sure to make sure that whatever they're doing is okay with the hydrants. They're not actually making it worse, but take ownership of that hydrant. That's kind of the thought.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify at this time? Hearing none, then public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 24-07?
Madam Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance serial number 2407.
Is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Crafton and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to adopt ordinance serial number 24-07. Is there discussion?
Madam
Mr.
Mayor?
Green?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, Erica, I talked with you a little bit earlier today on this about how we used to have flags, and even in the fire marshal's pictures that he passed around, I don't know if you saw those or not, but you could see the other utilities in the background, you know, the MTA, MEA, you know, they've got things clearly identifying, I mean, things that are 5 feet high saying, oh, hey, there's something here, so be careful. And you mentioned that we will have a program this summer to make sure that those flags are reinstalled and maintained. Is that correct?
Yes, through the mayor. So working closely with the fire marshal, we've been discussing what style of flags they approve of so it doesn't impede their access. One of the things that we do is prepare them for winter. And so we go around and make sure we know that all the hydrants that need to be dry so they don't freeze and break are pumped out. And we also replace flags. We are short on them right now, so we need to make a bulk order and get those back out so that they're highly visible for the first responders that need them.
I was just going to compound on that. We talked about it. We talked about it with the flags and what adopt the hydrant or adopt the highway. You know, people have the signs out there and there's a name and stuff that gets associated with it. Maybe that's an option for the flags, the whips too. If we can come up with a sign, adopt the hydrant type thing. Somebody takes ownership of that kind of area. That might be an option.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's a great idea. My question around it would be, let's say we do the adopt a thing. I've got one that sits at the corner of my lot right now, and I mean, I by all means could go out there and dig out around it. I mean, you can only see there's the flag that comes off it. There's no flag. There's just something that comes out of the ground. The thing's completely buried right now. What are we going to do around like the berms that the plows are creating?
And this is about the adoption of the ordinance.
Yep.
You can talk about the program after.
Well, I'm curious around like what we're going to do to keep it up going here, because I mean, if we're going to be fining people for, you know, putting snow in place of it, and the city's not keeping up on their own end of keeping and putting snow in front of our fire hydrants.
I go back to, this is the, it's the motion to adopt the ordinance, not what the
Okay.
ordinance states, not what the program's gonna be. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, Madam Mayor. So if we're going to identify the fire hydrants, other cities do things like they paint curbs and make sure that there's no parking around fire hydrants and you can actually see it. That was my first comment to where today, where appropriate. Obviously, this isn't always appropriate, but I think if you're going to do that, I mean, yes, there is a fire hydrant. People should see it, but we should at least say, yeah, this is a no parking area because we do have this ordinance in place. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that plowing, obviously, in snow is a big deal, and I want to make sure that our contractors who are plowing are aware of it and would make sure that they're not piling snow over the fire hydrant. I mean, that would be the city's responsibility, not just the citizens. So those are my only two comments. Thank you.
Okay. Is Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to go back to Mr. Crafton's comments, which I think were highly appropriate. We are adding a fine to our schedule of violations for fire hydrant interference, but we're not describing fire hydrant interference. Mr. Johnson brought up a couple of things to make it easier to identify the interference, but in the case of the city or in rare occasions the borough, perhaps plowing snow in front of a hydrant, which is on private property or commercial property or even public property, I think we should certainly somewhere in here define that, you know, whoever plowed the snow there is the one who is responsible for the interference and not the property owner. And I don't see that in the text of the ordinance. I don't have an amendment prepared at this time, but I would.
Madam City Attorney.
Yeah, if I could, Mayor, Section D defines interference with a fire hydrant, and it is any person who interferes with city staff or emergency responder access to a fire hydrant by placing or allowing to be placed snow/debris. So it is the person who creates the impediment, not the property owner. That's included in the definition.
So our roads department is gonna get fined because their guy, not the roads department, but the operator is gonna get fined because he did his job and plowed snow and it left a berm mark, which made the fire hydrant difficult to access. I mean,
we're gonna have to see what enforcement looks like. It's an enforcement question. I mean, if there's snow piled in front of a hydrant, Public Works is gonna do the work to figure out who put the snow there. If it's the city putting the snow there, I'm sure there'll be a conversation had about the fact that the city put the snow there. If it's a private contractor or a property owner, I mean, there's an enforcement question in my mind that maybe the director can speak to as to how successful people can be in identifying who has done what, but it's an enforcement question. It goes to how it will actually operate.
Through the mayor, I'd speak to the enforcement option. So, as we coordinate with the fire marshal, our first intent is to educate. We have more than 400 fire hydrants that many are along the roads that we're trying to plow. To not plow because of blocking a fire hydrant isn't good service to the community. We're the ones that dig them out. So the first task would be to have the community support it as much as possible. Adopt a hydrant's fantastic. I think every neighborhood knows that they want to be protected, and if neighbors take turns clearing the hydrant, then there's nothing to talk about. The idea on the fine is if we make contact with a person who keeps placing something in front of a fire hydrant, making it inaccessible, and we say, you need to stop doing that, you're making it inaccessible, and it is not met with the response that we need to maintain access. So it is the last resort of repeated ignoring of this code. Our first resort is always public outreach, and we will continue to clear the hydrants. We've cleared 30 in the last couple weeks just with the limited staff that we have available for it. So this is to the fine is the last resort of a repeat offender who does not take responsibility for the risk that they're creating by placing anything in front of a fire hydrant.
Okay, is there further discussion? If there's no discussion, is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, please read ordinance serial number 24-08 by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Amending Wasilla Municipal Code Section 1320.030 to authorize the airport manager to promulgate rules and regulations pertaining to the operations, maintenance, activities, and safety on airport property without council review.
Public hearing on ordinance serial number 24-08 is now open. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. And seeing no one, public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 24-08?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move to adopt ordinance serial number 24-08.
Is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
It's been moved by Councilmember Velock and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to adopt ordinance serial number 24-08. Is there discussion?
Mayor?
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
So I just have one quick question. I'm basically in for this. I just would like to know, okay, so for granting the airport manager permission to make rules for maintenance, so what happens if somebody violates his rule? Is there appeal, fine, what happens there? Thank you.
Okay. Public Works Director.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So a violation of rules that are not laid out in ordinance for fines would mean that there'd be an action against that person that's violating the rules. So in much the same way as there are rules within the parks, use rules, there are avenues to dealing with violations. Right now, the code only really talks about land use rules. And so the FAA expects the airport manager to be able to adhere to their rules based on federal regulations. And so this is the first step in having a list of behavior expectations for users at the airport that fulfill our local and federal requirements.
Okay.
Thank you,
Colleen.
Madam Mayor. Yes. Eric, with regard to the airport right now, if there's an incident that needs your attention, is there someone at the airport then that can report that back to you and then you handle it? And if this passes, then as our manager is hired, they're going to be having oversight of the airport, but will they also report to you what's happening or get your approval for the action that they take, or does this allow him to be independent?
The intent is not to create an independent state. I'm the airport manager at the moment. If a person was hired and delegated some of those authorities, that would still be something that comes to me and through the mayor, as she ultimately delegates that authority through me. So there would not be an isolation created of this. It would be a way to have regular standard expectations and rules at the airport so that we have a cohesive community out there.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion? If there's no discussion, is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is adopted. We are now at persons to be heard, a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issues raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. We will begin with Keith Jones.
Good evening. My name is Keith Jones. I've been a city employee since 2001 and have spent the last 16 years as a maintenance supervisor in Public Works. I'm currently the maintenance supervisor of our roads and airport. Later this evening, ordinance 24-13 will be introduced. I'd like to share some information for the council to consider over the next couple weeks before a vote is taken. As I speak tonight, I will be comparing what I receive as a non-rep employee to 302 union employees. In no way am I insinuating that the 302 employees are overpaid or do not deserve what they receive. First, I'd like to talk about the pay relationship between supervisors and employees. Since unionization, the 302 pay scale has outpaced the non-rep pay scale, and today the pay gap between myself at step 13 on the non-rep pay scale and a Tech 2 at step 13 on the 302 union pay scale is only 9%. Our job during the winter is snow removal, and that often requires us to start early. As a non-rep employee, my night shift differential of 5% applies if my shift starts between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. 302 employees' night shift differential of 6% applies if their shift starts between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Our typical start time to plow after a snowfall is 5 a.m., so I do not receive the shift differential while 302 employees receive 6%. On these days, the pay gap between myself and the Tech 2 changes from 9% to 3%. Taking it one step further, if I go on PTO, the Tech 2 receives an additional 5% acting supervisor pay. So when I'm on leave and the weather requires an early start time, the Tech 2 in charge can earn a higher hourly wage than I do. This isn't fair, and it needs to be fixed. As you are thinking about the $2,000 bonus in Ordinance 24-13, consider this. Since the first 302 union contract in 2009, 302 employees have received 2 floating holidays in addition to their PTO. For a long-time employee such as myself, 302 employees have received an additional 30 days of paid time off over what I have received. And according to the latest 302 contract, these 2 floating holidays can be cashed out. Sticking with the Roads Tech 2 at step 13 that I referenced earlier, their floating holidays can be cashed out for $733.76. Each year, 302 employees have the option of 2 extra paid days off or extra cash in their pocket. It's not called a bonus, but it sure seems like one to those of us who are not getting it. Approving Ordinance 24-13 next meeting will be a step in the right direction for compensating non-rep employees equally to our union counterparts. Thank you.
Okay, and next is John Becker.
Good
Please
evening,
begin by stating your first and last name.
John Becker, City of Wasilla resident and city employee. I'd like to speak to that ordinance 2413, and I'm in agreement with what HR is planning to do. Since 2007, all employees were on the same pay scale, whether they were salary or hourly wage, or it didn't matter. So you could see that there was a progression between each grade of 10%. Currently, that is not being maintained anymore. 2009 introduction of the unions maintained 10% of grades for that first year across across 5 different pay scales that you guys look at every year for. The 302 average between the step is what Mr. Jones was pointing to, is 3.7%. But on the non-reps, it's only 2.25%. So they're already gaining a whole percent of pay just by moving a step versus the non-reps. In FY 12, 13, 14, 15, the 302s gained 2.5% over the city employees. So for the past, since, well, even before 2007 to date, the city non-rep people have not received a pay increase whatsoever except for the COLAs, which even the 302s get the COLA. So I'm discounting that because everybody's getting it. But they've gotten pay raises 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, and the non-reps have not received 1 iota cent. And the only other statement I'd like to make against this 2413 is that it be retroactive for the full fiscal year, not just implemented upon your vote. Thank you.
Jess Griffith.
Hello, my name's Jesse Griffiths. I've worked for the city of Wasilla for over 13 years and pretty much each one of these departments. My most recent is that I've become the Parks and Properties and Facility Maintenance Supervisor, and I've been doing that for about 15 months. Tonight, the ordinance 2413 will be introduced, and as Keith and John back on the 8th stated, those numbers, I've went and looked at them. They seem like real numbers to me. And then they've also stated most everything I could possibly say tonight before me. So basically, what I was looking at is I love my job. We're very thankful for what we get to do around here and our supervisor positions. And, you know, we work hard at what we do. Although I do feel that the pay raise is appropriate for the non-rep employees simply to continue to help us appreciate the job we do and love. As I look forward into the following years of employment with the city, it appears that the longer that I work here, the less valuable I become. I believe that experience, workload, and output of work should only increase your worth and value in a career, not depreciate all the efforts that have been put forth. However, our pay grade is declining each year to eventually be within 9%, as others have said. The Tech 2 at the state, when we get to the step 13, and, you know, they get within 9% of us, it gradually works towards that. Prior to this, before the union stepped in, it was consistent that there was almost about a 20% difference between all of them. And as John said, 10% between each one of the levels, level Tech 1, Tech 2, Tech 3, are supervisors, as I would put that. They also receive 2 floating holidays a year. I believe they deserve what they have. I'm not asking to demean them in any way. I got an amazing crew and staff because of the fact that we're willing to pay money to get the kind of people we need here to staff and do what we need to do. I'm just noticing that whereas the non-reps have not received some of these same benefits over the time period that they have. And so as a non-rep employee, we are asking that you would take an ordinance 2313 and that it be passed. And I ask that these differences be reconciled by the council to improve the value and worth of the non-rep employees in order to keep the city running in a high standard that we all have become accustomed to. We ask that you please take the opportunity to show us that we are valued and appreciated for the hard work and the long hours we put in. And I thank you guys very much for your time. Have a good night.
Thank you, Jeff. And Miss Eileen left. Jeff Anderson? Okay. Melissa Young? Please begin your testimony by stating your first and last name. You've got 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Melissa Young. I am one of the non-represented employees of the City of Wasilla Finance Department. I work with the airport, accounts receivable, and insurance. I just wanted to introduce myself as you are voting on this, and this does affect everybody in my department. I do answer the phone calls when there are problems at the airport and relay them to Eric. I do deal with insurance and our windstorm and our $1 million windstorm claim that I'm trying to negotiate with insurance. I do contact customers when they're behind in sales tax and send them to collections. You know, it is a vital part of our revenue and how we come in, and I'm the one who bills them, and I'm the one who makes sure that whether it's our Wasilla PD accidents that get reported so that we get reimbursed from insurance, and this is what we do, just so you see a face to a name.
Thank you, Melissa. Jackie Goforth.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Jackie Goforth. You know, I have a little dog. He's very feisty. And I put him in a snow coat that makes him look like a little lion. He's got a little mane. Does that make him a lion? No, it doesn't. It's a facade. Well, Wasilla probably had an architect design their library. They placed a young adult teen section where it is for a reason. It's a bridge from children's to adolescence to adult fiction. That's what it's for. If memory serves me right, the books in that section have a label on the spine that's cartoony, it's done in yellow surrounded by red, and it says YA in capital letters. It's very visual. That area is now labeled adult temporarily. Does that mean that those books are adult? No. It's a sleight of hand. It means it's a lion's coat. That's why I started the challenge procedure for this book, Identical. Now, Identical was just voted as obscene by 6 members of the Citizens Advisory Panel for the Matsu School Board. And I don't know if you know this, but there's only 11 members. This book was just voted as obscene. It fit the criteria for obscenity. It also fits the criteria for enticement of minors and also for delinquency of minors. That's why I requested a meeting with librarian Zane Trish about it clear back in November, and twice more since then, because I need it moved to the adult section so it's not there for anyone who's under 16 to check out. That's the reason I asked. And I have been turned down now 3 times, and I've contacted the attorney twice, and I even filed a complaint with the Wasilla City on their website, and I have absolutely no action whatsoever. You know why? Because Zane is telling me it's already been through the process. Well, you know, the process, here it is, Wasilla Public Library, is 11 steps. There's 11 steps to the process. And this book went through step 5. It went through step 5 with another patron. She complained about it, and Zane wrote her a letter saying it was fine, and then she let it go. That's step 5. So when I asked him to meet with him, he said he doesn't have to because it's been through the process. Now, anybody who's gone through a door knows you're not through a door until you're on the other side. You can't be on step 5 halfway through the door frame. This has not been through a process. But then I was also told that it couldn't be challenged again until July. So since I can't be challenged till July, I think I'm going to read some of it for you. Now, this is a book that supposedly does not entice. I like what he gives me, too, and I'm mostly talking about the bud. I pick up my pace because right under his front seat, I know there's a fat, sticky joint with my name on it. You know, life has gotten better since I was introduced to my good friend marijuana. You couldn't have a more decent friend. I love everything about it. And I'll continue this next time. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the council at this time? Okay, Jake. Please begin by saying your first and last name.
Kathy Albright, or KJ Martin Albright. Okay. I just wanted to commend the city for doing the employee survey and presenting the results. And respectfully, as a former City of Wasilla employee who worked here almost 17 years, a good example of workplace culture would be when library staff, your city employees, are called pedophiles and groomers in public meetings, but council says nothing in their defense. If you don't support your employees as the city council, why would they show loyalty to you as the city? Thank you for your time, and please pass ordinance 2413 at the next meeting. It's not enough, but it's a good start. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to testify before the council at this time? Seeing no one, public hearing is closed. We are now on the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the items for approval under the consent agenda by title.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have special meeting minutes, January 13th, 2024, regular meeting minutes, January 22nd, 2024, special meeting minutes, January 24, 2024, and special meeting minutes, January 31, 2024. Left under our consent agenda are 3 ordinances for introduction. Recommended public hearing date, February 26, 2024. The first is ordinance serial number 2410, amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by appropriating $30,000 from the general fund balance to the cemetery improvements project fund. Ordinance serial number 2411, amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by appropriating $20,000 from the general fund balance for constructing a single speed hump. Ordinance serial number 2412, amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by appropriating $250,000 from the general fund balance for additional paving preparation. And lastly, ordinance serial number 2413, amending the fiscal year 2024 budget by appropriating $607,548 from the general fund balance for amending the the current non-represented pay rates and a retention bonus and a salary survey. We have no resolutions and one action memorandum left under our consent agenda, AM number 2407, contract modification to CCI Industrial Services LLC in the amount of $7,629 for additional work on the Spruce and East Susitna Water Reservoir Coating Repairs Project.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda as read.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Velock and seconded by Councilmember Rubio to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. There is no unfinished business, and under new business, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. We had one ordinance moved to new business this evening. We're going to take these in order. That is an introduction. Recommended public hearing date, February 26, 2024. That's ordinance serial number 2409, repealing Wasilla Municipal Code, Chapter 944 in its entirety to repeal the regulations that prohibit the distribution of single-use plastic disposable shopping bags by retail establishments in the city and persons at any city facility or any event held on city property, and amending Section 120030 to repeal penalties for violations of Chapter 944.
Do we need a motion?
Need a motion, yeah,
I need a motion
to introduce and set for public hearing.
to introduce and set for public notice, ordinance serial number 24-09.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I move ordinance serial number 24-09.
Is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
It's been moved by Councilmember Sullivan Leonard and seconded by Councilmember Rubio. Is there discussion?
Madam
Mr.
Mayor?
Crafton? I'm sorry.
Well, she moved in, so she gets the first right.
Oh,
Gets the first right.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Colleen.
thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm the sponsor of this particular ordinance, and I asked to have it be brought forward so that we could be in line with what we see in our establishments with regard to paper bags, plastic bags, or what have you. Much of the plastic bags we see today are recyclable. They're made of recycled material. They're used all throughout the city, as well as paper bags, and also for those that bring in their own bags. What I've seen in the last few years is that there's been no penalty for this. And I think the pandemic kind of brought us full circle in that. When you go to businesses now, some have paper bags, some have plastic, and there's been no issue. And there's also been no enforcement with regard to the plastic bags. So I felt that it was not prudent for the city to have a particular code that wasn't being enforced. And I think with just natural attrition, the city businesses have just gone to whatever works best for the consumer. Whether you're at Walmart, Fred Meyer's, or even some of our small businesses, they've all adjusted to what works best for them and their consumers. And so I felt that it was prudent that we bring this forward so that way we're not having something on the books that's not being enforced. And that's why I brought it forward. Thank you, council.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councilperson Sullivan Leonard. I agree with the fact that we don't need ordinances that serve no purpose. However, this ordinance has served exactly the purpose it was brought forward for, is to reduce the amount of trash on our highways, to reduce the amount of these flimsy plastic bags in trees, which were for quite a while known as the flag of the city of Wasilla by folks who traveled through. This ordinance has done exactly what it intended to do, and continuing to have it on the books and having voluntary compliance by our, the majority of our businesses shows that it is working. So to remove it from the books would essentially put people on notice that they can go back to these flimsy, single-use, non-biodegradable plastic bags, which clog up our systems, which make our city much harder to keep clean and much harder to make look clean. So I don't see any reason to bring this forward for discussion. This is an action by the council 5 or 6 years ago, responding to a problem, and it takes years to get the problem solved. The problem is solved, but it won't continue to be noticeable if we remove this from the books. I know myself, I've been to establishments before that were using single-use plastic bags, and I reminded them that those were not, they couldn't be used within the city, and some were surprised that that was the case, and some, like some of the bigger box stores, said, well, right now we can't get those, but in each of those cases I refer them to code compliance if they have questions, and remind them that there is an ordinance on the book that prohibits that, and there are fines associated with not complying with the ordinance. This ordinance has done exactly what we intended to do, and we need to keep it.
Mr. Crafton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd have to agree with Mr. Graham here. I think this ordinance has done exactly what it's intended, and unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get rid of all the trash, and there's always going to be somebody that doesn't follow the rules. And I know I spoke with some businesses and was letting them know about this as well, that it was coming up. And again, some of them just don't know. Maybe it's something when we get permits, we just need to remind them, hey, if you're using bags, just make sure you know that we have an ordinance in place that prevents you from using single-use bags. I think it's a really good idea. It puts the city of Wasilla forward that we care about the trash in our city. Obviously, we have a cleanup every year, and we care about it. So I think it's something we should be keeping in place, and there was a reason why it was put in place the first time around. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Is there further discussion? Ms. Rubio?
Yes, you get this on record right now. I'm agreeing with Stu and put it on there, guys, put it on there.
It's on video.
Yeah, right. No, I do agree with this ordinance. I do like it. I love it. I live in the city just like all of us, and we want it to be clean. So.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Is there objection to the motion?
Madam Mayor.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, Mr. Johnson.
Madam Mayor, I would call for a roll call vote on this.
Okay. Madam Clerk,
Thank you,
please do a
Madam
roll call vote.
So this is on the introduction of the ordinance with the scheduled public hearing date of February 26, 2024. Councilmember Graham.
No.
Councilmember Johnson.
No.
Councilmember Crafton.
No.
Councilmember Velock.
No.
Councilmember Rubio.
No.
Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Yes.
Okay, the motion to introduce fails with Councilmembers Graham, Johnson, Crafton, Velock, and Rubio opposed. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard in support. So that ordinance will not advance to public hearing.
Thank you. All right, we are now at communications. Madam Clerk, please read items by title.
Madam Mayor, we do have one more, if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay, if
I
I may,
thought that
under
was the
new
only one we
business.
had.
That's okay, may I?
Yes, please.
AM number 2408, confirmation of the mayoral appointment of Igor Galloway to the Planning Commission. This was pulled by Councilmember Crafton.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, I move AM number 2408.
Okay, is there a second?
Rubio seconds.
Been moved by Councilmember Crafton and seconded by Councilmember Rubio. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Crafton?
Thank you, Mayor. Couple things here. First, I want to say I was really excited to see this gentleman being brought forward. I don't know him personally, though we have a lot of mutual acquaintances, and I felt he was a very good fit for this role. There was a concern brought forward about this person's residency with the city. And the attorney will have some comments afterwards. After some discussion with the clerk as well as the attorney about it, what I would like to do is postpone this till the next meeting. And to give the reasoning why as well, I'm going to pass around a couple pieces of paper. Basically, from what I understand, this gentleman had changed his residency or changed his voter information to the city of Wasilla the day he submitted his application, as well as the address that he claimed as his residence doesn't have a physical building on it. And so there's some concern around where he actually lives. The first piece of paper I provided you shows the tax record showing that there's very little appraised value for a building. And then when you flip to and this is the 2024, so this was just done, that there's really no building on this property. And when you flip to the next page, you can see that in 2022, it was just a foundation, which tells me that there is nothing still on this property. I did happen to drive by it. I have some friends that live there, and so I've seen this multiple times, and there's still nothing there on this property. And so with that, I mean, my intent would be to let the Division of Elections determine if this person is a valid city resident and voter, because according to the complaint, this person is going to basically bring forth a complaint to the DOE to determine if this person is a valid city resident. And I believe the attorney has something she wanted to say about it as well.
Okay, City Attorney, Jess.
Yeah, I can give the same advice I gave earlier today. Only to say that for commission appointments, one of the qualifications for office is residency under Wasilla's code. We look to the state statute that governs voter registration, and the city administration relies on DOE voter rolls to determine residency. It's not city administration's job to investigate an individual's residency for appointment to any commission. We just rely on the DOE records. So to my understanding, this individual is with DOE registered as a city resident. And that's kind of the end of it unless somebody moves to DOE to further pursue whatever allegations of residency may be out there. That leaves council in a position where you can either go ahead and confirm him tonight, and then if later he turns out to not be qualified to hold the position, the seat would be vacated again. Or you can, it sounds like Councilmember Crafton may be proposing to postpone confirmation to a later date. But that's kind of the full gamut of it. The city doesn't sit in an investigatory role on these issues.
Mr. Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I move to postpone, whatever it is that we're looking at. I can't see the.
2408.
I move to postpone consideration of AM 2408 until the next regular meeting, and ask Mr. Galloway to appear before the council to explain his residency prior to a vote.
Madam Mayor, I second that motion.
Two motions, or is it legal? I just checked.
I think to a certain extent, I think if you want to move to ask somebody to appear, I don't believe you have any kind of subpoena power over a citizen to show up for any reason. So I don't know if you want to, you can leave it out there, but I don't think he has an obligation to arrive if council directs him to appear. So you can either leave it as is or you can amend, but I don't think there's any legal basis on which to require somebody to appear in front of council in this context.
If I may, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Councilmember Graham, would you be amenable to just the motion to postpone to next regular meeting? And because Mr. Galloway is an appointee from Madam Mayor, Madam Mayor, I think, could probably call him and just invite him to the next council meeting.
That sounds like a wonderful
Does
idea.
that sound like a great idea?
Okay, the motion on the floor is to postpone until the next regular council meeting. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, then it is approved. We are now at informational memorandums.
you like me to read those into the record?
Yes,
Communication?
please.
Item number 2403, monthly financial reports for the period ending November 30th, 2023, to include the month-to-date expenditure report and disbursements greater than 10,000, and Airport Advisory Commission meeting minutes, January 18, 2024.
Thank you. We are on to audience comments. It's a time for members of the public to share their views with the council. This is not a question and answer period or a time for dialogue. Speakers may be referred to administration, or issue raised may be taken under advisement by the council or administration. Is there anyone present who would like to address the city council? Please begin by stating your first and last name. You got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Jackie Ivy. Go forth again. I need to clear up some misinformation that has been given to you. It is an absolute fact that Call Me By Your Name is in the Wasilla Library. It's a DVD. I never said it was in the YA area or that it was a book. This book has also been discussed by the Public Advisory Board Committee, and it was unanimous by all parties, including the district employees or the school board employees, that it was obscene via the Alaska State statute. The reason I brought it up is because a school or a library board member out of Sutton had recommended it to children. She'd recommended it to all students. And a library board member out of Talkeetna had said that if you recommend obscene books, then that is grooming. And both of those things are absolute facts. Another thing that's an absolute fact, Wasilla is involved with the Matsu Library Board. It is not an entity that's not involved with it. There is a library board member that belongs to the Wasilla Friends of the Library. She was at the hearing. Now to the points, the challenges were made. Somebody says that the parents have given permission. They send out a thing saying parents have signed a permission slip saying that their children can check out absolutely any book. Well, let's put that in context. What if you gave your child permission to go to the library and they gave out lunches, but 0.2% of the lunches had cigarettes in them? That's illegal. Who is going to be charged? The parent who said it was okay or the person distributing? Who's going to be charged with distributing the material? The parent or the distributor? Here's another one. Somebody said that this book, Identical, has been in circulation since 2008, and that I found it online, which is absolutely true. And then I came in and went, oh my goodness, this book is in there. And so that makes it okay? Well, you know what? Let's do another hypothetical. My neighbor around the corner has been trafficking children for 15 years, but I didn't find out until the FBI showed up. Does that mean all those years were okay? No. These arguments are very interesting. And they always started with First Amendment, and they go after my character, and then they go after my integrity, and then they go after all of these other little things that have nothing to do with the fact that there are indecent material, there are books with indecent material in the Wasilla young adult section that is now the pseudo-adult section. And I do not relent. I hope, I'm a published author. It took me 22 years to get published. I got rejections that said, please quit putting paper through the torture of your words, okay? Nothing stops me. I am relentless. You will see me here, and I will be reading to you until that I get to talk to the librarian about that book. That's what's going to happen. So I appreciate your time and attention. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the council at this time? Hearing none, we will close audience comments and bring it back to the dais. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council members Graham and Velock are confirmed to attend the AML conference winter meeting next week in Juneau. So we wish them happy and safe travels. POFD, your annual public official financial disclosure statements, please have them to me by the filing deadline, March 15th. And then we'll see you here on Wednesday, next regular meeting on Valentine's Day, February 14th. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Nothing from us, other than we'll see you Wednesday also. Holly will be here.
Okay. Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thanks to everybody who attends and participates. Even if you don't participate, attendance here certainly shows a lot. So thank you all for being here. and those of you that sharing with us. I did, the clerk did mention that Councilmember Velock and I will be down in Juneau next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. If you have things from the public that you would like to have addressed, please let us know. And then obviously with the city, we will know as well. And I noticed on Sydney's presentation here today, you know, PERS was like the number 2 big concern for employees. So if employees want to share those concerns with us, we can certainly make sure we talk about them with our representatives as well, so that we're all on the same track and all moving forward to improve that culture of the city. Secondly, I wanted to ask a couple of questions on AM 2407, where we modified the contract for additional work on the Spruce Water Tower. Is any of that, you know, a lot of that was covered under a FEMA grant. Is any of the additional funding perhaps modifiable under that FEMA grant, or is that something that we can't pursue, just for my own knowledge there?
Through the mayor, we haven't chatted about that yet, so we need to sit down and figure out if it would go through the grant. The account has the balance in it, so that is an option if FEMA will allow it. So I don't know at this point.
Okay, I'd be interested to hear about that. Thank you. And then a second question for the staff. The walking track at the Menard Center is a great amenity to have there, and certainly something that was built into the center and has been more and more highly utilized. However, I'm hearing from more people, particularly seniors now, that the walking track closures are not really advertised anywhere. Are we, other than the door, people show up and they're not able to walk, as opposed to having something on the website? Or is that true, or can we make that true? Or
through the mayor to Councilmember Graham, yeah, so the track as a whole is affected by events.
Yes.
Certain events that are posted, and so we do that in the facility. I believe we post we usually post an annual closure list, and maybe we can do that more frequently. Specifically to seniors, they're affected no differently than the regular track users. So we can always improve our communication there. But yeah, it's posted usually, our known closures are actually posted for the whole year.
Right, but we do have events that come up where we don't use, where the track is unusable, which is great, means that we're using the facility for multiple purposes, which is great. But it, I don't know, like I say, improved communication would help, and if I can think of any good things to share with you, I will do that as well.
There's, again, the closure list is printed and next to the sign-in sheet for all track users daily. So it's available. We usually will post any closures minimum 7 to 10 days in advance in the facility.
Great.
So if they're any kind of regular or semi-regular users, they will see it, or should be able to see it. But
great, thank you, Scott. And then our next meeting is on Valentine's Day, February 14th. I'll be out of town at a family funeral at that time, so I won't be able to attend, which means I won't be able to share my thoughts on Valentine's Day with you, so I'll share those now. You know, Valentine's Day isn't just about your spouse or your partner. You know, it's about people that you appreciate. And I hope that that you can, you know, kind of adopt that attitude if you don't already have it, and show people that you appreciate them. You know, it doesn't have to mean you go buy a dozen roses or take them to dinner or anything. You know, you can give them a piece of candy, you can give them a handshake, you can do whatever, but let them know that you appreciate them. And even though Valentine's Day is marketed towards spouses and partners and that sort of thing, just let people know you appreciate them. You'd be surprised how big their smiles are when you just offer a handshake. So I would definitely recommend you do that. I apologize for my tardiness today, but I'm certainly glad I made it here, and we had a great meeting. I appreciate all the input from the council, and once again, from everybody here. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Crafton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, just thank you to the public for showing up and the city employees, as well as providing some feedback. again, it's always lovely to hear from you, and I'm looking forward to diving into some more of those comments on the from the survey. I'd love to see those. And then just to the council, I wanted to say thank you for your willingness to postpone that amendment. Again, the concern of somebody not being a resident and changing it was a pretty big concern. I think we all have some voter trauma right now with things. And so I again, would just like to see how it shakes out a little bit. So thank you much, and looking forward to spending Valentine's Day with you guys this week.
Councilmember Johnson.
No comment, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Rubio.
Thank you, Madam. Thanks to all that came out to talk, and the ones that didn't want to come up to the microphone. It's still good to see your faces and to hear all your concerns. About Valentine's Day and spending it with my city family that I love. I can't wait. I'll be here.
Councilmember Velock.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank everyone for coming. I really appreciated our HR staffs, how quickly they got an employee survey together and presented it to us. That was really impressive. And I'm actually impressed by the results. I'm definitely impressed by the response you received. In my previous life, we did do employee surveys every year. And I'll let you know that the results are not uncommon that we saw tonight. But the great thing about these surveys is, you don't know what the employees are thinking until, you have an idea because you hear them talk or whatever, but to see it in black and white and see the percentages, you can really start to make changes. And there doesn't have to be really big changes to really affect these percentages either. So it was just really good to see. I really appreciate that, and I'm really looking forward to the next employee survey where maybe we dig a little deeper and just make some great changes. It's a great start. And yes, Councilmember Graham and I will be in Juneau next week. That's always really interesting. It is. It's like being in a different world in Juneau. It's like, this is Alaska. So I'm really looking forward to that. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank the council tonight for all their work and look forward to seeing them on Wednesday. And then also for our audience, thank you so much for coming forward. Some of the things that we may not know is happening in various departments or with pay or benefits or other things that are happening within the city. We may not always know some of that integral information. It is really important that that does get to council, since the purse strings are certainly under our purview. I must say that the survey that was brought forward from HR, one of the statements that came through that I was surprised at was that the non-represented employees had never received a raise that was commensurate with the union representatives. And I believe I had asked that through an email, and the information I got back had indicated that they were receiving raises. So I think I need to go back and kind of see what the history is on that, because I would hate to think that we kind of left you guys down here while the union is up here in the sense of pay and benefits. So I think that's something we really need to look at. But anyway, good job to everybody tonight, and thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Johnson.
You got him. You already got him.
Oh, he already got it.
You got me already.
Okay, I didn't want to forget you. So, Jackie thought I'd forgot you. Anyway,
Thank you.
Anyway, the library books. The lady has been told by our attorneys that she is only to talk to them. Our director at the library has been told, you don't talk to her, you send her to the attorney. I don't know, we moved everything from young adult to adult, and that still didn't satisfy them. So we won't do anything until there is a ruling on this ACLU lawsuit against the school district, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We're gonna wait and see what the ruling's gonna be on that. I don't know what it's gonna take to please them, because so far we've not been able to. And KJ, I want you to know that I, as mayor, support every person over at that library. And one thing, these people that are coming with these books and stuff, and they're trying to trash Zane, you know, they don't realize he's a Baptist preacher, for goodness sakes. So they have no idea who they're talking about. All of those people over there are you couldn't ask for better people. So, you know, karma will bite you. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So, anyway, Crystal and I will both be in Juneau next week. They tell me they've had 100 inches of snow.
Oh, gosh.
Won't that be wonderful? Yes. So, anyway, it'll be interesting to see. You better take your boots with you.
I have my boots whenever I'm around you, Madam Mayor.
Huh? I know you are. No umbrellas this time. Boots. Oh, and Mr. Graham, I know you love me, so are you gonna bring me flowers? Is that the deal?
You're darn tootin', I'll bring you flowers.
All right.
I'll take a picture of them and send them to the clerk.
That's what I thought.
You asked.
Whew. So with that, we are adjourned at 8:31.
Hey, Jess, could I see you for a second? I'm gonna try to call you.